Hello, welcome to episode 8 of How to Win a World Cup. This is called Wear the Shirt. There's a moment when you're first picked to play for your country that you never forget. And both of these England teams understood something profound about that moment, that what you put into a player's hand right then matters enormously. Because you're not simply telling him that he's good enough, you're telling him that he now belongs to something far, far bigger than himself. This is an episode about belonging, about a shirt, a badge and a chain of names stretching back more than 150 years, and about the strange, measurable fact that a person will give more, suffer more and rise higher for something bigger than themselves. And it begins with Clive Woodward and a worn leather book. When Clive picked you to play for England, he didn't just hand you a shirt, he handed you a book. He called it the Bible, bound in leather, and every player received one as a rite of passage the moment he was selected. Inside was everything it meant to be an England player. All the hopes, the standards, the expectations, set down in black and white. And its central idea was relentless. You represent England at all times, not just on the pitch, not just when you walk into the team hotel. Always. If a man lifts his standards in the small things off the field, his expectations of himself on it rise to meet them. How you carry yourself becomes how you play. And he really cared about this book, this Bible. When he told the Rugby Football Union that each copy would cost £275, they nearly fell off their chairs and begged him to do it more cheaply. He refused flatly, and he won. A leather book at great expense for each player. Because belonging cannot be a vague feeling, it has to be made real. It has to be something you can hold in your hands. He built the same idea into the walls. He turned the England dressing room into what he called Fortress Twickenham. He put the red rose on everything. He had each player's name mounted above his place in the changing room, so a man knew that this spot was his, that he belonged here. We are, he always says, products of our environment. So he made the environment that whispered privilege and weight and history at every turn. He even insisted the squad wear matching polo shirts, rather than turning up like, in one player's words, a load of lumberjacks, simply so they would feel like part of one thing. And here's how I know he meant every word of it. When England won the World Cup, his wife bought him a flagpole, and to this day an enormous cross of St George flies on the grass outside his front door. This was never a marketing exercise for Clive. The man feels England in his bones, and he wanted every player he picked to feel it too. Now for the strange part. For all its history, English football had somehow forgotten to do any of this. One of the finest strikers England ever produced, Michael Owen, admitted something startling. In his entire England career, he said, not once in that dressing room did anyone ever mention the team's history or what it actually meant to be English. Just think about that. Some of the most famous football players on the planet pulling on the most storied shirt in the country, and no one ever told them whose shoes they were standing in. Gareth Southgate brought in a man to fix exactly that. A culture specialist, a New Zealander named Owen Eastwood, who found that gap heartbreaking. Eastwood's thinking came from his Maori heritage, from an idea called whakapapa, the sense of an unbroken chain of people stretching back and forward through time, arms linked, never breaking. He believed simply that you cannot know where you are going until you understand where you've come from. So he went into the National Archives and dug out England's whole story, right back to the beginning. And he sat with old players to understand what the shirt had meant to them. And then he and Gareth Southgate told the players that story. They made them a film, beginning with a man called Cuthbert Ottaway, the captain of the very first international football match ever played against Scotland in 1872, and moving down through the giants, the Matthews, the Moores, the Charltons and the Trailblazers, like Viv Anderson, the first black player to represent England. The players, by every account, were swept up in the emotion of it. But they did not stop at a film, because Woodward was right. Belonging has to be something you can hold, something you can feel, something tangible. Someone worked out that more than 1,000 men had played for England since 1872, an elite and unbroken club. And they gave every single one of them a number. Number 1 was Robert Barker, the goalkeeper in that very first match in 1872. And the chain runs unbroken all the way down to the players of today. Your legacy number. Your place in the line. And they made a cap, a beautiful one, in deep red velvet, with each player's legacy number stitched onto the front. After the history film, those caps were presented. A member of staff handed a cap to the senior player, Jordan Henderson, and Henderson then turned and presented his cap in person to the youngest man in the room, Jude Bellingham. One generation literally placing the chain into the hands of the next. The players posted their caps with open pride. Even long-retired greats told their numbers years later, spoke of how moved they were. It's the same instinct as Clive Woodward's leather Bible, arrived at entirely separately 20 years on. And Southgate framed it in words that could have come straight out of that Bible. "We are part of England's history," he said. "There is a far longer story than just us, so we must have the humility to know where we sit in it, make the most of our moment, and leave the team in a better place than we found it." So this is the 8th chapter in How You Win a World Cup. People would give more to something bigger than themselves than they will ever give to themselves alone, so connect them to it. Make belonging tangible, not just a slogan, not just a team talk, but a thing a person can hold and keep. A book, a cap, a number, a name on a wall. Tell those people whose shoes they are standing in, because you cannot truly value something whose story you have never been told. Set the bar of belonging high and people climb to meet it. You represent this always, not only when it's easy, and carry yourself like a single link in a long chain. No more important than those who came before you or those who will come after you, there to hand it on stronger than you found it. 2 teams, 2 sports, the same quiet truth. A player who knows in his bones that he belongs to something that will outlive him, plays like it. Next time we go from the story you belong to the story you carry inside you, because the bravest thing these teams ever did was not on a training pitch. It was a grown man standing up in front of his teammates and telling the truth about himself. Next time we talk about the courage to tell your story. I'll see you then.